and thank you for joining us for this special edition of State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. Our program today highlights our latest investigative project, something we're calling a hanging on Backbone Creek. As Texas's population grows, critics point to the need for more medical examiners in death investigations, instead of the state relying so heavily on its current process in most counties. That process involves an elected justice of the peace, already assigned to many court-related duties, who also has the power to determine cause and manner of death. They do so with scant training and often without autopsies or forensic expertise. During our reporting, Texas lawmakers resumed efforts to modernize that antiquated system as a nearly forgotten mystery resurfaced with a fresh review of a young girl's strangulation case. Here's a look at a hanging on Backbone Creek.
It just always was a story that haunted all of us. Anyone that was living in Marble Falls in November 1965 has a memory of this happening to this beautiful young girl. The young girl that was murdered down by Backbone Creek.
You were in the same grade as Daynon Lewis.
Yes.
We were in the 8th grade.
She had beautiful blonde hair, and she was extremely quiet.
She was found in a small shed behind the house, hanging from a rafter or something, but her knees were touching the ground. Well, it didn't take, much imagination to figure out something's wrong.
I don't think anybody really believed that it was a suicide at the time.
I don't think she died by her own hand.
Somebody that was visiting the neighborhood had some peeping Tom issues, was staying within a few houses of Daynon's family.
There were other theories other than what was listed on the death certificate.
I do have a copy of the death certificate.
First off, I would have sent the child for an autopsy.
In the absence of a medical examiner, the Justice of the Peace is responsible.
Are you comfortable enough coming up with a manner of death, cause of death?
The death investigation system that started back in the 19th century.
Like the Dark Ages to the modern world.
Is it time to figure out a different system?
At this point, I feel comfortable with what I do.
A justice of the peace is an elected office.
Yes, it is an elected office, yes.
Politics does play a role in everything. They're all trying to not have a bunch of unsolved cases laying around. It just seemed more of a fanciful cover-up, if nothing else.
I think Daynon was such an innocent soul.
She was murdered.
I would love to see it solved.
Maybe we could found the truth.
Like the hundreds of other JPs across Texas, the Justice of the Peace in that case had a lot of responsibilities and power. He could issue warrants, hold court, perform marriages, and because his county had no medical examiner, he served as a coroner and investigated deaths himself, even though he wasn't a doctor with any medical training. That role is unique to Texas and still exists today, nearly 60 years later. And since it's an elected position, some say it can get very political.
When you see locally, as a county judge and a county commissioner, that your JPs are being overwhelmed because of the workload that they have, well, then it's time to take action.
Justices of the peace historically are individuals in a community where if a cow wandered over into somebody else's property and there was an argument over who the cow belonged to, went to a justice of the peace. My name is Judge Rick Hill, Brazos County Justice of the Peace, Precinct 3.
What are the qualifications to be a Justice of the Peace in Texas?
To get elected JP in the state of Texas, basically you have to have a pulse, all right? You have to be 18 years of age. You have to live in the county for 12 months, in the precinct that you're going to serve for 6 months, not be a convicted felon, and be mentally competent. And so as long as you can keep getting elected, you can stay in office. For the vast majority of Texans, the only experience they will have in the justice court system is at our level. I like to kind of consider JPs as the landfill of cases that no one else has to do. We do all the evictions in Texas. We do criminal court, we do truancy, we do dangerous dog hearings. 90% of all the cases filed at any level in the state of Texas are filed at our level.
JPs date back 200 years in Texas. Archives reference them well before statehood, since the earliest days of the colony, introduced by a man known as the Father of Texas, Stephen F. Austin, in 1824. Texas is unique with that last responsibility. Many states primarily use elected or appointed officials called coroners, who have some training to investigate and certify deaths. Some primarily use medical examiners, doctors who've studied forensic pathology to conduct autopsies for that purpose. And a handful of states primarily use other elected officials to act as coroners, including Texas, which is the only one to specifically utilize justices of the peace. There are medical examiners here, but only in 14 counties. The rest rely on JPs to carry out that coroner role on top of all their other duties. Again, they're not required to have medical training like a doctor, though they can contract for autopsies in counties with medical examiners or private entities, but often that does not happen. So why would a JP want to tap a medical examiner for their expertise? Eric Henriksen explores what makes that role more qualified to determine how someone died.
This is science. I mean, it's terribly difficult, right? Hi, my name's Gary Prokop. I'm with the American Board of Pathology. We certify individuals after they've completed training in pathology or the subspecialties of pathology. For an individual to be a medical examiner, they have to first be a physician. So they would be trained in anatomic pathology or anatomic and clinical pathology, a combination certificate. Then after that, they would go on to individual subspecialty training or fellowship training in forensic pathology. After all that, they would be qualified to sit for their examinations for forensic pathology.
According to the Travis County Medical Examiner's Office, this training from medical school to examinations takes at least 9 years.
In our minds, that's why a board-certified forensic pathologist is the best person to do a complex death investigation, because they have this broad training. There's a lot to learn. Every cause of death and every manner of death.
A full death investigation conducted by an ME involves multiple steps, from exploring an individual's medical history, testing blood for drugs or poison, to examining the crime scene.
We're looking for things like cut marks, obviously gunshot wounds, fractures of the bone that are associated, that were occurred sometime around their death. Hi, my name is Danny Westcott. I am the director of the Forensic Anthropology Center and a professor of anthropology at Texas State University. We typically will work with medical examiners. Most medical examiners are medical doctors, and so they're used to working with soft tissue. We usually get involved when the body is badly decomposed or skeletonized. It's an individual case, but you're using scientifically validated methods to investigate that case. And so that's what makes it a science.
For medical examiners, this process was developed by NAME, the National Association of Medical Examiners. These standards were approved by members of the association and are used in autopsies across the country.
So like if I say that the individual is female, I'm not just saying it's female, I could actually give you how confident I am in that. So I could say, in this case, I'm like 95% sure that this individual would be a female versus just, it's like 50-50 guess. Part of the scientific process is actually having the methodology to be able to give those statistical confidences.
That investigation could go down something that's, unique to forensic pathology, something like a suicide or a homicide, or it could go down a natural death pathway. If a area can only afford a justice of the peace or a coroner, then you really would want to make sure that that individual knew when to call for help.
As a matter of fact, it's not uncommon for me to get a photograph from a justice peace that says, we just came onto the scene, there's bones, is a human. And as far as I know, I've never seen a justice peace that wouldn't have called somebody out that they think is an expert.
If you had a complicated case with somebody actually trying to cover up a murder, make it look like a suicide, something like that, you'd really want to have somebody who is trained in that subspecialty.
But medical examiners are in limited supply. Only 14 of 254 counties have them, though there are also some private services. NAME tells us there are likely only around 750 practicing forensic pathologists nationwide. And that's part of the reason their expertise can cost a lot. While JPs in other counties can tap them for autopsies, we learned it can cost up to $4,700 per body, and that's straight out of the county's budget.
Thanks, Eric. Still, we've learned some Texas counties are considering the long-term savings and choosing to fund their own medical examiner office in the near future. State lawmakers made it tougher in recent years to require more counties to get a medical examiner, but after our questions, that could change next legislative session. More to come.
If I could have the perfect system, it would be a big state like Texas to have regional medical examiner offices where you would have offices in certain areas and they would cover large populations or multiple counties. Ideally, you wouldn't need the JP system. You would just have it all go to those offices. Even if you combine 2 or 3 counties and said, hey, let's all get together and form an ME office. Just to be realistic, we understand every single state and county has a different budget. They have to do what's best for them.
Welcome back. Texas lawmakers recognize death investigations are important to their constituents, and in recent legislative sessions, there's been quite a debate at the Capitol over which counties use JPs and which have a medical examiner. Today, only 4 Texas counties have 2 million people or more, the population count that recently required them to add an ME. In 2019, that threshold doubled from 1 million, a change that meant 3 additional counties did not need to establish ME offices yet, even though most on that list already have, except for Denton County in North Texas. In 2019, a lawmaker named Tan Parker successfully pushed the new population requirement through the legislature, allowing Denton County, part of his home district, to avoid getting its own medical examiner, and with a few other counties, continue its long-standing partnership with nearby Tarrant County to fund and operate a shared regional ME's office there. An opportunity he tells Arzo Dost he could explore for more counties next session.
How could getting more counties' medical examiners help modernize the death inquest system? And do you think it's time to move in that direction?
My view is I want local counties to make that determination if it's best for them. At what point do you need all those additional services to be able to take care of people's needs? And so that's really the balancing act, as opposed to just saying we have a one-size-fits-all approach for all the state. I really try to provide local control. When you see locally, as a county judge and a county commissioner, that your JPs are being overwhelmed because of the workload that they have, well, then it's time to take action. That's my perspective. You want to do the right thing with care and compassionate for people that obviously have lost a loved one, but you at the same time to protect the taxpayer, right? We want to continue to be the place where we minimize the tax burden on our people across the board. So we've got to be intelligent about how we do that.
That was Arzo Dost speaking with Senator Parker. Arzo joins us in studio just ahead as we look closer at the challenges we faced while investigating this issue, along with some of the ways the JP system has modernized since 1965, when the Hill Country case we're exploring started. When we return, a major update, why a new Justice of the Peace is reviewing Daynon Lewis's death after our questions, coming up. We hit a lot of roadblocks in this investigation. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced when trying to get records in that 1965 case?
The majority of the records are destroyed, so it was really a matter of finding archived records and people who were alive at the time in Marble Falls.
Like we learned in that case, death investigations are very specific depending on the state. What makes Texas unique?
Texas uses justices of the peace, so they handle death investigations and judicial duties.
Some people wouldn't talk with us. How did you get around that?
Well, we had to really explain the depth of this investigation and the impact that it would have on the future.
And what did you do when medical examiner offices wouldn't let us in?
I just kept asking and asking. I went to every medical examiner I could until we found someone willing to let us in their offices and see what they do.
That was an inside look at the reporting challenges our team faced during this statewide investigation. We have more about those online now. One of our discoveries, tracking any trends or problems with death inquests performed by justices of the peace, is nearly impossible. With around 900 precincts, you have to file individual requests, which can be a long and costly process. There is no central statewide system the public can access. The state health department does collect death certificates, but those are sealed for 25 years after a person dies. So the latest records available are not recent. My reporting partner, Arzo Dos, joins me now in studio. Arzo, we were able to get some of the data from the State Commission on Judicial Conduct, which was actually created the same year as the case we've been exploring in this project.
Right, Josh, 1965, and really the commission was created to provide oversight and look at allegations of judicial misconduct when it comes to positions like justice of the peace judges. Now, we looked at disciplinary records dating back in the past 25 years because that's what's been readily available. And what we found was there have been more than 400 investigations and actions taken against justice of the peace judges across the states, which have resulted in everything from resignations to, just stepping down altogether. And in some cases, they've dealt directly with death inquests. Keep in mind, for there to be a disciplinary action, there had to be a complaint, and complaints can be filed by anyone.
Well, we know that a few years after that commission came about, the state also got the Texas Justice Court Training Center, which in part helps JPs better perform death inquests, right?
Right. The center was established in 1971, and it was really affiliated with Texas State University out of San Marcos. The whole purpose of it was to provide education not only for justice of the peace judges, but constables and court personnel. Now, if an elected official is, sworn in, as soon as they're sworn in, they're required by law to get 80 hours of training through the center, and then 20 hours of additional training every year to follow. And the training covers everything from what to do day to day in court to how to handle these death investigations. And the trainings can be, done virtually, in person, through workshops. And the part that they really focus on is death investigations, which can include everything from when to order an autopsy to when to have conversations with the medical examiners, and really also understanding toxicology.
Since the legislature first required counties in the 1950s with a certain population size to establish medical examiner offices and no longer rely on justices of the peace for death investigations, this has been a very political issue. We've seen a real fight over rural versus urban interests and also concerns about spending taxpayer money.
Absolutely. Today, that population threshold is 2.5 million, and some counties are approaching that. Williamson County in the northern part of the Austin area, the 4 justices of the peace judges have expressed concerns for the last year, talking about growing dockets and growing death investigations and needing to really do something about it. So the county thought the solution would be to supplement with death investigators starting in January, but ultimately these judges say there needs to be a medical examiner for a county that's growing like this. And that's certainly a concern that lawmakers have heard. This is something they've talked about for the past decade. So it will be interesting to see how things are handled and what solutions are looked at this upcoming legislative session,
which we will continue to follow. Thank you very much, Arzo. Online now, A Hanging on Backbone Creek, the complete digital investigation. Watch the entire docuseries, explore the Daynon Lewis mystery and other reports on Texas's Justice of the Peace system, and more, including an update on how our questions could soon lead to change at the state capitol. And don't forget to listen to a new season of our Catalyst podcast, where we take a closer look at this 60-year-old case and how our team pieced the evidence together. It's all online now on this station's website. Before we go, an update to the Daynon Lewis case. During our investigation, nearly 60 years after her death, the new justice of the peace who presides over the precinct that used to encompass her neighborhood got involved. Judge Deborah Bensel agreed to review our findings and research the process to reclassify Daynon's death from accident to undetermined on her death certificate. That change is now underway. The original justice of the peace died a few years after Daynon, whose own family has not spoken with us on the record about the case. However, her classmates say this action is promising, a way to honor her dignity and ensure she's not forgotten. I'm Josh Hinkle. Thank you for watching this special edition of State of Texas.